everybody, I'm Jared from CarBuzz, and I'm going to be showing you the 2017, yes I said 2017 Lexus LX570. Now Lexus is going to continue this model for 2018, but it's going to have minimal changes, so it's going to be virtually identical to the car we have here. We have our tester model. It's the 3-row version of this massive SUV. Ours is painted in a nice shade of nightfall mica. In layman's terms, that means blue, which I think is very, very pretty on this car. And we have a tan leather interior, which looks really, really good in combination with it. I think this is a very imposing looking SUV. It's very intimidating and tough looking, especially with these streaks and bulges on the hood. I really love the way they have this bulged hood here. I don't necessarily love the way that Lexus's spindle grille has been executed on this model. I like the spindle grille. I think this is definitely one of the least elegant iterations of it, though. Although there are some other styling tweaks that I like. Lexus has tried their best to try and keep this thing looking modern throughout the years with minimal updates. I think these headlights are some of the best that they've ever done, and I think if we come around back and I can show you the tail lights, these are also absolutely beautiful. It's hard to tell when they're off, but they have sort of these little dots in it that make it seem three-dimensional, and I love how it just forms this L shape here. It's really, really nice looking on this SUV, and the whole back end just looks pretty good as well. It's an old-fashioned SUV with old-fashioned guts, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. This is no mom crossover. This thing is tough, this thing is rugged, and this thing can handle anything. Now we're going to go ahead and look at the interior. So stepping inside the LX570, of course you have keyless entry. You just put your hand on it and it'll open up. You have a touch sensor here that will lock it and fold up your mirrors. So we'll just get in it. Like I said, we have this beautiful, lovely tan leather interior. It just feels really, really soft to the touch. A lot of automakers now are doing very firm, very stiff leather seats. This ain't one of those interiors. The leather here is just so sumptuous. It's so soft and squishy. It feels really, really good. The only complaint that I would have is the bolstering is not very great. They definitely feel more like a leather recliner that you would have at home instead of something sporty that holds you in. And with the massive, massive ride height of this SUV, you really get tossed from side to side if you do decide to take it through a corner. The other complaint about these seats is there isn't that much adjustability. You have your normal seat controls here for forward, backwards, and your backrest. You have basic lumbar support, and then the front can also extend for people with longer legs, but there are just seats now in the market that have so much more adjustability than this. Lincoln's seats spring to mind. They adjust in so many different ways. It's almost overkill, but Lexus might want to have a rethink and offer a little more adjustability on these seats. There's also no massage function, which sounds a bit silly, but for $96,000, yes, that's right, I said our tester is just a shade under $96,000. I'd actually like to have massage, but Lexus doesn't have them. Standard or optional, not possible on the LX, which is a bit disappointing. Not disappointing is the rest of the interior. The quality here, the materials are absolutely fantastic. From the moment you shut that door, you get a nice thunk that you're in a Lexus, and a truck Lexus at that. You have the analog clock that they've been doing on a lot of their models, and yes, hallelujah, that is real wood. Lexus knows how to put real wood in a car, and they didn't even bother finishing it with any of that tacky, glossy stuff. This is the real deal. It feels real. It feels fantastic. It feels rough to the touch. You can scratch it up. I mean, it's pretty durable though, because it's real nice wood that looks like they literally cut it off a tree this morning. I love it. It looks really good. It blends really well in this interior with the metal, which also feels really, really nice and really real. And the leather that they use, I mentioned it on the seats, but nowhere is it more soft than on this cushy armrest. Every single thing you touch has nice stitching. all of this that I'm touching is leather. Everything here is leather. Around the starter button is leather. Up here is a nice soft touch material. This is one of the only non-leather bits on it, but so be it. And we have one of these segmented steering wheels where it is heated. This part is leather. These upper parts are wood, which normally isn't great because wood is slippery, but this is that rough, nice wood that I mentioned up here, and it really is a nice grippy material on the steering wheel. And this steering wheel isn't too different than a lot of other models that Lexus has. It's very familiar, the buttons and everything. So now let's go ahead and start it up so I can show you some of the other features. Of course, like most Lexus models, when you start it up, it has a comfort access, so your chair will slide further to the wheel will come closer to you, and that makes it easier to get in and out when the car is off. The gauges are actually very, very simplistic. I actually really like them. I think they're very pretty. These are timeless. They're never gonna look outdated. You have an oil pressure gauge, which I thought was really interesting. There aren't a lot of cars that offer that anymore. You have your normal engine temp, your normal tachometer. In the middle, you have a helper display that displays all sorts of things. I have it now showing our fuel economy, which is very, very, very poor. It's only 11.4. I've done a little better than that, but trust me on this, this is not a fuel efficient car with a 5.7 liter V8. We have our temperature that stays constant. We have our range, only 51 miles left. I'm gonna need to fill up soon. I don't look forward to that. You have your eco indicator, which is just like a dummy light. So as you drive more economically, that turns blue. And then as you put your foot in it, it goes and shows you that you're not driving economically. You have your speed, and you have some other functions. You can do your tire pressure. Yes, it actually even shows the tire pressure of your spare. One of the things that's unique about this truck is it'll show you your wheel position. So if I turn it, you can see on the screen there, the wheels actually turn in real time. So that's one thing on this center display that might not be found on other Lexus models. And then you have your navigation, your media, your lane departure warning controls. That's if you get any text messages or service alerts, and then you can adjust settings. Nothing too fancy. It's a nice looking screen, but there are bigger, more customizable ones in the market now. We do have a head-up display, which is interestingly positioned very, very close to the center. This is such a wide vehicle that I think Lexus couldn't put it right in front of you. They wanted to make it more towards the center of view so that you would be less distracted. You can control that head-up display from here. There are a couple other things as well. You have your auto headlight control that automatically puts on the high beams and turns them off when it senses oncoming light. And then you have your head-up display control. And then you have this button here, which is actually kind of interesting, this one that I have my finger on. That's for the comfort access suspension. So we haven't gotten over here yet to the center console, but one of the things that's unique about this truck is that you can adjust the height on it. So you have 3 settings for that: normal, low, and high. And unfortunately, you can't drive around full time in the low or high settings, but the low setting does help you get in and out of this. It's a very, very tall vehicle, so short people like myself are gonna have a bit of a trouble stepping up even with a running board. The low setting really, really slams this car to the ground and makes it easy to get in and out. Likewise, the high setting is really mainly for off-roading, and if you go above a certain speed with that high setting on, it will revert back to low, and you can shut the whole thing off if you just want it to stay in normal height. But it's pretty neat to watch it go up and down. I had a lot of my friends enjoying seeing how this thing could go from slammed to jacked up at the flick of a switch. Now, the center console is one of my biggest complaints about the car. I really love how it has all of these controls for, you have your crawl control, all of your 4-wheel drive controls are managed here, which is nice that they're, you know, old-fashioned dials. A lot of people hate when they get buried in a screen or a menu, but what that does is it takes away storage space. This is a massive SUV, and I was driving the Mazda CX-9 a couple weeks ago, and this is one of the problems that I noticed with it too. It just didn't manage its space very well. So as you can see here, there's a little space here. If I flick this up, you've got 2 cup holders, and that's about all the storage you get up here. You do have this nice cushioned armrest to put stuff in, but you can't really access stuff in an armrest armrest. You have these headphones in here, which I could not for the life of me figure out how to get. You have this nice springed armrest. I actually had a bit of fun playing with that, which is a nice feature. You don't have to hold it up, it just stays up, but you don't really want to be getting stuff out of the armrest, so the only place really to put stuff, and if you have 2 drinks, there's nowhere really else to put your phone, which is kind of inconvenient. They do actually give you, optionally on our model, is this wireless charge pad, so you can stick your phone in there and it will wirelessly charge if your phone has the capability. Mine does not. Also, it's not exactly an accessible place. Once it's in there, it's in there. You're gonna have to either take it out to check messages. You're really not gonna see what's going on when it goes in there. It's stuck in there. You have your USB and your aux, and then you have your normal 12-volt outlet as well. So yeah, the storage space is not that great, and that's one of the things that's a little inconvenient about this car. Other features, this thing has plenty of them. You have your heated and ventilated seats, although no massage. You have your heated steering wheel, and then you have all of your 4-wheel drive controls, which is pretty interesting. The crawl control, this actually doesn't do anything unless you have the 4-wheel low engaged. To do that, you can control that from over here. You have 4-wheel high, or push it down and pull it down, and that'll engage 4-wheel low. You have to be in neutral to do so. You have all of your controls. This helps you steer. When you're in 4-wheel low, your steering ratio becomes a little bit harder, so this will make it less locks turn to turn to help you turn around. Traction control off. This is to lock the center diff. You have a second start assist, which will help you in snow. So there's a lot of these controls, but I do wish that they had done it in a manner that didn't take as much dash space. I really wish that all of this had just been freed up and I could just leave my phone sitting there. Then, as with most Lexus models, you have this dial here, which you can change the drive modes. And I wish that they weren't the exact same trigger. I've more than once gone to use this and activated the crawl control. Luckily, it doesn't do anything unless you have 4-wheel low engaged. It was just a waste of me putting my hand there. They probably should switch these two around. So you have way too many modes. You have your normal and a custom that you can switch between by pushing it. I can show you up here. When I switch, it'll go through different modes. There's your Sport, Sport Plus, Comfort, Eco. So tap it, push it, normal. Once over, Comfort. Once again, Eco. Over this way is Sport, and then Sport Plus. I don't know why they gave this car a Sport Plus mode. Trust me, I've used it. It does not do hardly anything. You're best to just leave it in normal or Comfort, because those are the settings that it just is happiest with. It has a normal PRND shifter with an S over here. Again, doesn't really do much. It does let you shift. There are paddles here, but I'll be darned if I can figure out how to make them actually do anything. They're very, very slow to respond. They're not what I would call sporty whatsoever. So now when I put it in reverse, you'll see, luckily on such a big car, it might not come through great on camera, but we have a very, very clear, very high resolution backup camera with trajectory lines and a round view camera, so we can see all around, and you can customize different views. So you can see if, for example, you are parallel parking, you won't hit the curb because you'll see it. All of your climate controls are handled here. They look like touch buttons, but they are actually physical buttons, which is great. I hate touch capacitive buttons. And unfortunately, everything is controlled on this Lexus remote controller. So you have to, I'll show you here, you have to use the controller here. It has haptic feedback, and I end up just missing things all of the time. So like I'm trying to get to AC and I missed it, I overshot it. There we go, I got it. It's very, very difficult to use when you're driving around. When I increased the haptic feedback on it, it made it a little bit better, but it was still not the easiest thing in the world. And we have the optional Mark Levinson surround, which is very, very nice. It's got 19 speakers around the cabin, and I thought this was just a nice display that they had here, but in fact, if I open this up, we have our map, little SD card for the map. So that's a nice little hidden feature for people who have the Lexus LX. You can also invoke those cameras if you want. You have a button here that will invoke it, so you don't have to be in reverse for that. Down here we have our collision avoidance, and then we have our power liftgate control. So now I'm going to show you the back of the LX570, which is a pretty darn nice place to sit, if I do say so myself. The few SUVs where you can sit 3 people in the second row, perfectly comfortable. I'm sitting behind myself. I have more than enough leg room, and I have these wonderful sunshades built in, so that I don't have to deal with the sun. I've got 2 speakers here on the door, and of course I have my own climate control vents. But that would just be a boring way to control them with these normal twisties right here. I also have them up here. I have a lot more customizability if I pull down this center here. So if you do have a center seat occupant, you won't have access to these. But now I have access to my air conditioned and heated seats. I have access to the fan speed and the temperature back here, and I can turn it all off with this button. And it's just nice to have this back here. It gives the rear seat occupants something to play around with. I do have one 12-volt outlet down here, although I wish that Lexus had given us some USBs back here. It's 2018, Lexus people want USBs to charge their devices. And then we have 2 cup holders here, and then additionally we have a couple in the doors as well. There's not a lot of storage space in here. It's pretty shallow, so you're not really going to get too much in this center armrest. Now, the one complaint that I do have about these seats are I'm a bit upright the way I'm sitting now, but luckily we have a little lever down here that I can recline back, and I can recline up to give myself a lot more room back here to sprawl out, which is pretty nice. I like it back here enough. I would have no problem riding in here for several hours at a time. So now I'm going to show you the third row, which is a bit interesting, and for that we're actually going to come all the way to the back. And one of the other things that's interesting here is these seats do slide this way. So they're manually adjusted on the recline, but the slide forward and back is powered. So to get to those third row seats, they fold up in an interesting way. The seats come all the way up like this, which gives you a nice flat load floor behind them. So now I'm going to show you how we're going to engage those third row seats before we come back and get in them. So of course we have a power liftgate, but interestingly Lexus knew that a lot of people might want to just do a manual tailgate. So if you push the button, it just becomes a manual tailgate that you can close manually, which is kind of interesting, or you could push the button to have it go down. And it's a split tailgate as you would get in a Range Rover. So to get this part down, you just pull this little trigger and it's dampened so it'll fall down. We do have a toolkit in here, and this will take a good amount of weight. And this is an interesting third row configuration. You can also get a 2-row configuration of this Lexus, but Lexus sent us the 3-row version. So as you can see, we have our second seat folded up, and obviously this part of the second row can also fold up as well. And here's how these seats are going to work. We have our controls here for the left and the right. So I'm going to take them both and push the buttons at the same time. You'll hear them beep. And now they're down in their first position. So now they're down and ready to be activated. We have these nice tabs that are held in place by these little magnets. Pull those up and put the magnet back. And then we have our first seat engaged. And then I can do it the same on this one. That does take up a lot of your trunk space, and unlike something like a Navigate or an Escalade, they don't offer an extended version that offers a little bit of cargo room behind it. That's the lot. So if you do have 8 people in this car, you're not going to get a lot of stuff behind them. So now I'm going to sit in the third row and show you what that is like. Getting in is fairly easy because you have this huge gap that is afforded to you by having the second row fold the way that they do. So now I have all of this space in front of me, and I can put these seats back up. And there we go. The problem is I don't have a ton of leg room. I feel like I'm sitting very close to the floor. There's not a lot of space here between the floor and the top of the seat, so my knees are very, very close to my chest. But other than that, I actually do have a little bit of room before my knees touch. And of course, the second row can be slid forward to give me even more room. So as far as third rows go, this is one of the most comfortable in the business. Now, we don't really have a lot of storage back here. We have this little cubby, and then we have two very, very small cup holders, but there's no USBs. I don't see any 12-volt outlets except for one that is behind us in the back. And, you know, so there's really not a lot for us to be doing. Lexus didn't send us any model that has any rear seat entertainment, so you're just going to be a bit bored back here. A full-size adult isn't going to want to sit back here for too long, but kids on a long journey would be absolutely, absolutely comfortable. So let me show you how to get out. I'm just going to grab this lever here. The seats are going to fold all the way up and make it very, very easy for me to get out. Very easy, one of the easiest in the business in my opinion. Now, one of the unfortunate things is these are going to actually take up a lot of cargo room because they do not fold flat into the floor. Now, to put them down, I'm just going to push these ejector buttons. They're going to fall. And then I push the button and they fold up using electricity, which is very, very cool. And it is flush with the wheel well, so they are saving a little bit of space there. But it's a very interesting configuration that they've been using for a very, very long time that Lexus just seems a little bit stubborn to change. I like it enough, although a lot of SUVs are figuring out how to do it a little better. I wish that you could remove these and make it a two-row so that you would have the option, but once they are installed, they are in there. And now I'm gonna close up the tailgate. I'm gonna push the power operated lift gate, wait for it to close. Now we're gonna take the Lexus for a drive. Okay, so I'm driving the 2017 Lexus LX, and this is something that I've wanted to do ever since I was a little kid. One of my best friend's mom, when I was growing up, she had one of these, and I just remember riding in the back of it thinking how comfortable it was and how expensive it must have been, and how I'll never get to drive one of those unless I do really well for myself. So now I'm here driving this car. The tester that Lexus sent us is a tick under $96,000, making it one of the most expensive cars I've tested. And unfortunately, I don't think the LX has lived up to what I thought it would be. And I thought it would be sort of this amazing experience that could not be trumped by any other luxury car. And it just kind of feels old at this point. This is a 2017 model, and Lexus hasn't really done anything to make the 18 any different, so they're practically the same. But yeah, even the 2018 model, I don't think it's going to be everything that I thought it was going to be. Driving behind the wheel of this car, you know, you're just sort of put off by the fact that when you try to go around a corner, as I'm about to do now, it's a pretty sharp one, you're gonna fall out of your seat a little bit. And even though I know the corner is coming, I still find myself getting pulled in the opposite direction, and your passengers are definitely going to be a little uncomfortable when you go around any sort of turn or a highway on or off ramp. It just sort of porpoises around, and yeah, the tall ride height really throws you for a loop. Now, this is not a crossover. This is not an SUV that is really based on a car platform. What this is a body-on-frame truck. This thing has some good old-fashioned guts. We've got a 5.7 liter V8 up there that produces 383 horsepower and 403 foot-pounds of torque, which sounds like a lot. It really does. And all of that goes out to a constant four-wheel drive system. There's no way to make this car rear-wheel drive, front-wheel drive. It's four-wheel high all the time, and you can obviously engage four-wheel low if you get in some real trouble. And all of that goes out through an 8-speed automatic, which sounds fine. A lot of cars have 8-speed automatics now. But this just feels like one of those first-timey 8-speed automatics when they were first coming out, and all of the car reviewers were saying, you know, 8 speeds is great, it's more than 6, it's a novel idea, but in practice it really just doesn't kick down the way I want it to, and it doesn't have the power band that I would like it to have. And this is what that feels. I'm gonna kick down now. Go now. It doesn't feel fast even with 383 horsepower on tap, and that's because this truck weighs really close to 6,000 pounds, which is a really big boy. So you can put your foot in it all you want. You get a lot of that V8 noise, but you don't really feel like you're going too fast even when you are. And that might be because I'm so high up off the road and I feel so separated from the speed. But trust me, this car is just not fast. It does not like to be rushed. It's much better when you just relax, let the automatic do its thing. And right now we're cruising. I'm doing about 40 miles an hour and it's at 1,000 RPM. I can barely even tell that it's on. So as a luxury car, this thing still does pretty good. Now, you can kick it over here into S, and that lets you take advantage of the paddle shifters, but I don't know why you'd want to. I'm gonna put my foot in it now. I approach the rev limiter now, and you heard that, it cut timing real hard. This thing just cuts timing if you even approach that rev limiter. I'm gonna shift now a little better. Yeah, really, really long between when you pull that paddle, downshift, and it shifted. Yeah, really long, probably one of the longest times between pulling the paddle and a shift. There you go. Yeah, it really, really doesn't like being used on the paddle, so I'm not sure why Lexus even bothered putting them on there. Likewise, we have this drive mode controller. So I talked a little bit about that when we walked around the interior. And that would be fine if there was just a normal, maybe an eco mode, and then like maybe a sport mode. But there's so many modes in this truck. So you've got your normal, which is what happens when you push. There's also a custom mode that you can engage when you push it again. You can cater different things. They don't really do anything. I'm gonna put it in comfort mode now. I don't really feel anything different. You know, I've driven it around in all the modes and I can barely tell them apart. Tap it once more to the left and that engages eco mode. All that does is maybe pull the throttle back a little bit, but you really don't feel it that much. And eco mode in a V8 car where I'm averaging 12.5 mpg just seems like, yeah, you're not gonna wanna use eco mode. And then there's sport mode. You know, the screen glows red, but you see, it still didn't downshift quickly in sport mode. Well, that's why they put in Sport Plus mode. Why is there a Sport Plus mode? That's something that's usually only reserved for F Sport models and F models. There is no F Sport, there is no F model that you can get on the LX, but downshift? There we go. All right, so Sport Plus mode, I don't think it really does anything. I guess it holds it, so I floored it and it stayed in the RPM a little longer than it would have had I been in normal mode, but really, it's best to just let this thing sit back, do its thing. It's a very comfortable, competent long-distance cruiser. It's very quiet in here. The materials in here are excellent. You're gonna be very, very comfortable driving this car along. I don't know if it's quite as comfortable as something like a Range Rover. It doesn't have anywhere near the amount of features as something like a new Navigator, which is now one of the best full-size SUVs in the class. The interior technology is a bit dated. Lexus needs to do a little bit of catching up when it comes to that. And this is just such an old school feeling truck. If you really like that feel of, oh, I'm driving something old fashioned that's gonna last me a very long time, then by all means, this is your truck. I think that this is perfect for somebody who's maybe in their 50s or 60s, done well for themselves, about to retire, and only wants one car for the rest of their existence. This car could easily do it. Lexus always tops the dependability surveys, and this is probably the most dependable thing they make. It's a simple, low-stress V8. It's gonna last forever. You're not gonna have to take it to the dealership ever, if at all. It sounds good. when you do have to get on it, although it's not fast, as long as you're only mildly using the power and not putting your foot in it, it's fine. It gets up to speed in 7.2 seconds if you care. But it's best to just let it haul around. You know, you can take up to 8 people in comfort, but there's more techie ways to do it. There's better looking ways to do it. For my $96,000, I think I'd rather get something that people know is expensive. People look at this and they don't really assume that it's $96,000. They kind of just assume that it's another expensive Lexus. And Lexus is going to be coming out with a 3-row version of the RX, which I'm sure is going to outsell this handedly. But Lexus keeps making this, it's sort of a heritage product for them. It's like Ivory Soap or the iPod. Apple doesn't make a click wheel iPod anymore, but I'm sure there are people out there that wish that touchscreens didn't take over the way they did and you could still get an iPod with a click wheel. So for those type of people, I think they would buy a car like this. For me, I think there's just too many alternatives on the market right now, and I can't really recommend the LX over all of them. It may have the reliability, it may be very comfortable in here, but I think the Lexus is just outclassed in so many areas, and it wouldn't be the big truck that I would buy. Sorry, Lexus. If you liked that review and you'd like to see more, subscribe to the CarBuzz YouTube channel and be sure to download our app on iOS and Android. Hope you enjoyed the video.